My beloved child. Wait. Do not scroll away from this message yet. Because something about tonight feels different. Not ordinary. Not random. Not accidental. Pause. Take a slow breath. Listen carefully. Because this message is not reaching everyone the same way. Some people will hear only words. Others will feel something deeper. And if you are still here right now, perhaps your heart already understands why. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, many people protect material things carefully while quietly neglecting the two greatest assets shaping their future every single day. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. This story begins late at night. Inside a quiet office building where almost every light had already turned off. Almost. One light still remained glowing behind a closed door on the highest floor. Inside sat a man surrounded by papers, contracts, unopened letters, and old family photographs. To the world, he looked successful, respected, organized, powerful. Yet inside, something felt deeply unsettled. Because despite everything he owned, peace had quietly disappeared from his life long ago. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, some people spend years protecting possessions while forgetting to protect their peace and relationships. Think about that carefully. Because many people do the same thing without realizing it. They protect schedules, protect accounts, protect reputations, protect appearances, yet slowly neglect the things that matter most deeply. Family connection, inner peace, wisdom, health, time. And one day, they suddenly realized those invisible things were the true treasures all along. The man sitting in the office received an unexpected envelope that night. No return address. No company stamp. No explanation. Only 5 words written across the front. Before the final deadline arrives. Pause. Because somebody listening felt that deeply. The man stared at the envelope for several minutes before opening it. Something about it felt personal. Almost impossible to explain. And inside, he discovered a single handwritten page. Not a legal notice. Not financial paperwork. A warning. But not the kind of warning he expected. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, the greatest losses in life rarely happen suddenly. They often begin quietly through years of unnoticed neglect. The man continued reading. And every sentence felt more personal than the last. You are protecting the wrong things. Your family feels farther away than ever. Your peace is disappearing beneath constant pressure. Your heart has become exhausted pretending everything is still fine. The man immediately stopped reading. Because suddenly, memories started returning. Missed dinners. Ignored phone calls. Conversations rushed too quickly. Promises delayed repeatedly because work always came first. At the time, those choices seemed temporary. But years passed faster than expected. And now, distance quietly existed inside the family. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, some relationships do not break dramatically. They slowly weaken through moments people believe are unimportant. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening needed exactly that reminder tonight. The man walked toward the office window slowly. And for the first time in years, he admitted something honestly to himself. He had spent so much time building external success that he quietly stopped protecting inner peace. And suddenly, the warning no longer felt mysterious. It felt true. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, two of the greatest assets you will ever possess are peace within your heart and connection within your family. Pause there. Because somebody listening has been feeling emotionally distant lately. Busy, but disconnected. Successful, but exhausted. Surrounded by people, yet strangely alone inside. The man looked again at the handwritten page. And near the bottom, another sentence had been underlined carefully. The collapse does not begin when something is lost. It begins when gratitude, presence, and wisdom quietly disappear. The room suddenly felt completely silent. Because deep inside, he knew those words were true. Not only for him. For countless people. People constantly rushing. Constantly distracted. Constantly postponing meaningful moments until later. Without realizing. Later arrives faster than expected. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, some of the most valuable things in life cannot be recovered once enough time passes without attention. Think about your own life. What truly deserves more attention right now? What relationships need more presence? What parts of your heart need more peace? What moments are passing too quickly unnoticed? Those questions matter. Because awareness changes direction. Direction shapes the future. That process quietly changes lives every single day. You may notice the QR code on the screen or the link in the first comment and description. For some viewers, it becomes a meaningful place to continue reflecting on messages like these, explore prayer resources, connect with encouraging community discussions, or discover additional faith-centered reflections connected with peace, wisdom, family, and personal growth. Others continue reflecting privately in their own way. Both approaches can be meaningful when chosen sincerely and intentionally. Because reflection creates awareness. Awareness creates wisdom. Wisdom creates clarity. And clarity influences direction. Some viewers also quietly choose to support spaces that continue sharing encouragement, reflection resources, prayer-centered messages, and uplifting community conversations through the support links below. Others simply continue reflecting privately. Both choices are meaningful when approached sincerely and freely. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, wisdom grows stronger whenever people intentionally create space for reflection, gratitude, and meaningful connection. The man finally folded the letter slowly. But before placing it away, he noticed one final line written at the bottom in smaller handwriting. A sentence that completely stopped him. 3 days from now, your family will need a version of you that money alone cannot provide. The moment he read those words, his phone suddenly rang. And when he looked at the screen, his entire expression changed. Because the call was from his daughter. At 2:13 in the morning. And she never called that late. You may once again notice the QR code or the link below. For some people it provides access to prayer pages, reflection resources, encouraging discussions, and supportive community spaces connected with messages like these. Some viewers quietly choose to sow encouragement and support into communities that continue sharing hope, wisdom, reflection, and spiritual encouragement with others. Others continue their own reflection privately. Both paths can be meaningful when approached freely and sincerely. Because sometimes the greatest warnings in life are not about money. Sometimes they are about the quiet things the heart is slowly losing without noticing. But stay close. Because part 2 reveals what the daughter said during the late-night phone call. And why the man suddenly realized the warning letter already knew something he had ignored for years. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, the greatest turning points in life often begin with moments people almost dismissed as ordinary. Backhand index pointing right. Comment this word if this message reached your spirit. Awaken. Backhand index pointing right, and if you are ready for the next section, comment. Part 2. Because part 2 reveals the shocking late-night phone call that changed the man's understanding of his family forever. Part 2. The phone call that made the warning feel real. My beloved child. Stay here. Because the moment the phone began ringing, something inside the man immediately felt wrong. Not panic. Not danger. Recognition. The kind of feeling that arrives when the heart suddenly realizes something important has been ignored for far too long. Pause. Take a slow breath. Listen carefully. Because what happened during that late-night phone call changed everything. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, many people do not recognize what truly matters until life interrupts their routine long enough to make them listen. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The office remained silent except for the sound of the phone vibrating against the desk. 2:13 a.m. His daughter's name glowed across the screen. And immediately, a forgotten realization surfaced. He could not remember the last real conversation they had shared without distractions. Not rushed. Not interrupted. Not shortened because work came first again. Just a real conversation. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, some relationships do not need more money, more gifts, or more promises. Sometimes they simply need more presence. Think about that carefully. Because somebody listening has been physically present, yet emotionally distant for a long time. Busy schedules. Endless pressure. Constant responsibilities. And slowly, the people who matter most begin receiving only what remains after exhaustion takes everything else. The man stared at the phone for several seconds before answering. And when he finally did, the first thing he noticed was silence. Not ordinary silence. The kind of silence that carries emotion too heavy for immediate words. Then finally, his daughter spoke softly. Dad, were you awake? 4 simple words. Yet something about her voice immediately unsettled him. Because for the first time in years, she sounded small again. Not like an adult. Not independent. Like the little girl who used to wait by the front door for him to come home. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, sometimes one quiet moment reveals how much emotional distance has quietly formed over time. Pause there. Because somebody listening felt that deeply tonight. The man leaned back slowly in his chair. Suddenly unable to focus on the office around him. Because memories started returning unexpectedly. Birthday dinners missed because meetings ran late. Promises postponed because deadlines felt urgent. Vacations cancelled because work demanded more time. At the time, every decision seemed temporary. Yet years passed quietly. And now, something inside him realized what had slowly been disappearing. Not wealth. Not success. Connection. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, some of the most painful losses in life happen gradually while people are too distracted to notice them forming. The daughter finally spoke again. And what she said next completely froze him. Dad. I found Mom crying tonight. The room suddenly felt colder. Not physically. Emotionally. Because deep inside, he already knew why. Not because something dramatic happened that night. Because years of emotional exhaustion had quietly accumulated inside the family. The constant pressure. The emotional distance. The feeling that everyone lived in the same house, yet rarely truly connected anymore. The man slowly closed his eyes. And suddenly, the mysterious warning letter on his desk no longer felt symbolic. It felt painfully accurate. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, many families do not collapse through one single moment. Distance quietly forms through repeated absence, exhaustion, and forgotten connection. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening needed that reminder tonight. The daughter continued softly. I don't think Mom misses money. I think she misses us feeling close again. Pause. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The man looked around the giant office slowly. The expensive furniture. The awards. The framed achievements. The glowing city lights outside the windows. And suddenly, none of it felt impressive anymore. Because for the first time in years, he realized what the warning letter meant about his greatest assets. Not accounts. Not contracts. Not possessions. Peace. Family. Connection. Presence. The things money cannot replace once enough time passes. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, success means very little if the people you love begin feeling emotionally alone beside you. Think about that carefully. Because many people chase external achievement while their inner life quietly becomes exhausted. And one day, they suddenly realize the people they love needed more than financial support. They needed emotional presence. Attention. Time. Understanding. The daughter spoke again softly. Dad, do you remember when we used to sit together on the porch after dinner? The man immediately felt tears filling his eyes. Because he remembered. The summer evenings. The conversations. The laughter. The feeling that life moved slower back then. And suddenly, he realized something painful. The family did not lose connection overnight. It disappeared gradually beneath years of constant busyness. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, what people repeatedly prioritize eventually shapes the atmosphere inside their home and heart. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly that reminder tonight. The daughter continued. Mom said she misses the version of you that used to actually rest. The word struck deeply. Because he could not remember the last time he truly rested emotionally. Even during family dinners. His thoughts stayed trapped inside work. Even during conversations. Part of his attention remained somewhere else. And slowly, his family began feeling that distance. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, attention is one of the greatest forms of love people can give each other. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening has been distracted for too long. Distracted by pressure. Distracted by stress. Distracted by endless responsibilities. Meanwhile, important moments quietly continued passing by unnoticed. The man looked again at the handwritten warning letter on the desk. And suddenly, another sentence stood out clearly. 3 days remain before the loss becomes visible to everyone around you. For the first time, he finally understood. The warning was never about lawsuits. Never about secret enemies. Never about financial destruction. It was about emotional collapse quietly forming inside the family while nobody fully acknowledged it. And suddenly, everything became clear. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, some of the greatest emergencies in life are emotional ones people continue ignoring until relationships begin fading silently. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed those words tonight. The man finally spoke softly into the phone. I'm sorry. And for several seconds, neither of them said anything else. Because sometimes the deepest healing begins not with dramatic speeches, but with honest awareness. The daughter finally whispered something that changed him forever. Dad, I don't think we need a richer life. I think we need more of you. The tears finally fell. Because in that moment, the entire warning letter made perfect sense. Not every loss in life is financial. Some losses happen quietly inside the heart. And those losses matter deeply. You may notice the QR code on the screen or the link in the first comment and description. For some viewers, it becomes a meaningful place to continue reflecting on messages like these, explore prayer resources, connect with encouraging community discussions, or discover additional faith-centered reflections connected with peace, family, emotional healing, and personal growth. Others continue reflecting privately in their own way. Both approaches can be meaningful when chosen sincerely and intentionally. Because reflection creates awareness. Awareness creates wisdom. Wisdom creates clarity. And clarity influences direction. Some viewers also quietly choose to support spaces that continue sharing encouragement, reflection resources, prayer-centered messages, and uplifting community conversations through the support links below. Others simply continue reflecting privately. Both choices are meaningful when approached sincerely and freely. Archangel Michael says, My beloved child, wisdom grows stronger whenever people intentionally create space for meaningful connection, gratitude, and emotional presence. And before this message ends, the man noticed something else inside the envelope he almost missed earlier. A second folded page. Smaller. More personal. And written across the front were words that immediately made his entire body freeze. For the moment you finally choose what matters most. The moment he saw those words, he realized the night was far from over. Because suddenly, he understood the next decision would change his family forever. You may once again notice the QR code or the link below. For some people it provides access to prayer pages, reflection resources, encouraging discussions, and supportive community spaces connected with messages like these. Some viewers quietly choose to sow encouragement and support into communities that continue sharing hope, wisdom, reflection, and spiritual encouragement with others. Others continue their own reflection privately. Both paths can be meaningful when approached freely and sincerely. Because sometimes the greatest turning points in life begin the moment people finally recognize what they were slowly losing all along. Backhand index pointing right. Comment this word if this message reached your spirit. Presence. Backhand index pointing right, and if you are ready for the next section, comment. Part 3. Because Part 3 reveals the second hidden message inside the envelope, and the decision that completely changed the man's family forever. Part 3. The second letter that forced him to choose between success and the people he loved. My beloved child. Stay here. Do not leave this moment too quickly. Because the man was no longer staring at an ordinary piece of paper. Not anymore. The second folded letter resting on his desk suddenly felt heavier than every contract surrounding him. He had spent years believing pressure came from work, from responsibility, from financial expectations. But tonight, something deeper was being revealed. Pause. Take a slow breath. Listen carefully. Because what happened next changed the direction of his family forever. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, many people become so busy trying to build a successful life that they slowly stop being emotionally present inside the life they already built. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The office felt strangely silent now. The city lights outside the windows no longer looked exciting. The awards hanging on the walls no longer felt meaningful. Even the expensive office suddenly felt cold. Because for the first time in years, the man realized something painful. He had spent so much time protecting his career that he quietly stopped protecting the emotional atmosphere inside his family. And suddenly, the phrase from the first letter returned clearly inside his mind. Two of your greatest assets are disappearing. Now he finally understood. Not money. Trust. Connection. The invisible things that hold families together quietly over time. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, relationships rarely collapse suddenly. Distance forms gradually through repeated moments of emotional absence. Think about that carefully. Because somebody listening has been physically present, yet emotionally unavailable for far too long. Always busy. Always tired. Always distracted. Always saying, later. Without realizing. Later slowly became years. The man finally unfolded the second letter carefully. And immediately, the very first sentence made his entire body freeze. Your daughter no longer misses your success. She misses your attention. Pause. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The man lowered the paper slowly. And suddenly, forgotten memories started returning one after another. His daughter waiting by the window when she was younger. Family dinners interrupted by business calls. Vacations shortened because meetings felt urgent. Conversations ended quickly because exhaustion always arrived first. At the time, he believed he was sacrificing for the family. And in many ways, he truly was. But now, he realized something painful. His family needed more than provision. They needed presence. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, some people become excellent providers while quietly becoming strangers inside their own homes. Pause there. Because somebody listening felt that deeply tonight. The man continued reading. Your family does not need perfection from you. They need to feel emotionally seen again. The words hit harder than he expected. Because deep inside, he already knew they were true. His wife had become quieter over the years. His daughter stopped sharing details about her life the way she once did. The house slowly lost warmth without anyone openly discussing why. Not because love disappeared. Because connection slowly weakened beneath stress and distraction. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, people often notice emotional absence long before they know how to explain it. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening has been carrying invisible emotional exhaustion for a long time. The man stood slowly from his chair and walked toward the office window. The city below looked alive. Cars moving endlessly. Lights glowing everywhere. People rushing constantly. And suddenly, he saw himself in all of it. Always moving. Always chasing. Always rushing. Yet emotionally farther away from the people he loved most. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, the world constantly teaches people how to build careers, but very few people are taught how to protect peace inside their own hearts and homes. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly that reminder tonight. The man finally noticed another section underlined carefully near the bottom of the page. 3 days remain before emotional distance becomes normal inside your family. The sentence completely unsettled him. Because suddenly, he realized something terrifying. Not terrifying in a dramatic way. Quietly terrifying. People can slowly become emotionally disconnected without even noticing when it began. Families can drift apart silently. Not through screaming. Not through hatred. Through distraction. Through exhaustion. Through emotional neglect repeated gradually over time. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, some of the deepest losses in life happen quietly while people are too distracted to recognize them forming. Think about your own life. Who needs more presence from you right now? Who misses the version of you that used to truly listen? What relationships deserve more attention before emotional distance grows too large? Those questions matter deeply. Because awareness changes direction. Direction shapes the future. The man suddenly remembered something painful. Years ago, his daughter once asked him a simple question before bed. Dad, when work is finally finished, will you spend more time with us? At the time, he smiled and answered quickly. Of course. But work never truly finished. Another project appeared. Another deadline arrived. Another responsibility demanded attention. And slowly, important moments quietly disappeared into memory. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, some people spend years preparing for a future while unintentionally neglecting the people sharing the present beside them. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The man looked again at the letter. And suddenly noticed one final handwritten paragraph near the bottom. The hidden lawsuit is not against your finances. It is against your attention. The room felt completely silent. Because suddenly, the entire metaphor became clear. Every distraction. Every delayed conversation. Every emotionally absent moment. They had quietly been stealing something far more valuable than money. Connection. Trust. Warmth. Presence. The true foundations of family. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, what people consistently give their attention to eventually shapes the emotional atmosphere surrounding them. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening has been giving too much attention to pressure. And not enough attention to peace. The man finally sat back down slowly. And for the first time in years, he made a decision. Not about business. Not about money. About priorities. Because suddenly, he understood something clearly. No achievement would feel meaningful if the people he loved no longer felt emotionally close to him. And in that moment, the warning transformed into wisdom. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, success becomes empty when it costs the emotional connection people were working so hard to protect in the first place. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed that reminder tonight. The man reached for his phone again. And this time, instead of returning to work, he opened old family photos. Birthday pictures. Vacations. Simple evenings at home. Moments he once believed would always remain available later. And suddenly, tears filled his eyes again. Because now he understood something deeply. The greatest moments in life often look ordinary while they are happening. Only later do people realize how valuable they truly were. You may notice the QR code on the screen or the link in the first comment and description. For some viewers, it becomes a meaningful place to continue reflecting on messages like these, explore prayer resources, connect with encouraging community discussions, or discover additional faith-centered reflections connected with peace, family, emotional healing, and personal growth. Others continue reflecting privately in their own way. Both approaches can be meaningful when chosen sincerely and intentionally. Because reflection creates awareness. Awareness creates wisdom. Wisdom creates clarity. And clarity influences direction. Some viewers also quietly choose to support spaces that continue sharing encouragement, reflection resources, prayer-centered messages, and uplifting community conversations through the support links below. Others simply continue reflecting privately. Both choices are meaningful when approached sincerely and freely. Archangel Michael says, My beloved child, wisdom grows stronger whenever people intentionally create space for meaningful connection, gratitude, reflection, and emotional presence. And before this message ends, the man noticed something written on the back of the second letter. 5 words. Words that completely changed him forever. Go home before it's too late. The moment he read those words, he immediately stood up from his desk, grabbed his coat, turned off the office lights, and for the first time in years, work was no longer the most important thing waiting for him. You may once again notice the QR code or the link below. For some people it provides access to prayer pages, reflection resources, encouraging discussions, and supportive community spaces connected with messages like these. Some viewers quietly choose to sow encouragement and support into communities that continue sharing hope, wisdom, reflection, and spiritual encouragement with others. Others continue their own reflection privately. Both paths can be meaningful when approached freely and sincerely. Because sometimes the greatest turning point in life begins the moment someone finally chooses presence over pressure. Backhand index pointing right. Comment this word if this message reached your spirit. Home. Backhand index pointing right, and if you are ready for the next section, comment. Part 4. Because Part 4 reveals what happened when the man finally returned home, and why one emotional conversation changed his family forever. Part 4. The night he walked through the front door and realized what his family had been feeling for years. My beloved child, stay here. Because the drive home felt longer than any journey the man had taken in years. Not because of traffic. Not because of distance. Because for the first time in a very long time, He was alone with his thoughts. No meetings. No emails. No distractions. Only silence. And inside that silence, truth finally became impossible to avoid. Pause. Take a slow breath. Listen carefully. Because what happened when he finally returned home changed his family forever. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, many people stay busy because movement feels easier than sitting quietly with what their heart already knows. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The city lights reflected across the windshield as he drove slowly through empty streets. And suddenly, small memories started surfacing one after another. His daughter waiting for him after school when she was younger. His wife falling asleep on the couch waiting for him to come home from work. Family dinners interrupted by phone calls. Promises postponed. Vacations delayed. Conversations rushed. At the time, he believed those moments were temporary sacrifices. But now, he realized something painful. Temporary habits slowly became permanent distance. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, emotional distance rarely arrives through one dramatic moment. It quietly grows through repeated moments of absence. Think about that carefully. Because somebody listening has been emotionally unavailable for longer than they realize. Always tired. Always distracted. Always carrying pressure. Meanwhile, important moments quietly kept passing by. The man finally turned into the driveway. And for a moment, he just sat there inside the parked car, looking at the house silently. The same house he worked endlessly to provide. Yet suddenly, he wondered something painful. Had he been protecting the house, while unintentionally neglecting the hearts living inside it? Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, providing comfort means very little if peace and connection slowly disappear inside the home being protected. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly that reminder tonight. The porch light was still on. And immediately, another memory surfaced. Years ago, his daughter used to leave that same porch light on whenever she waited for him late at night. Back then, he thought it was a small habit. Now, he understood it differently. She wasn't waiting for money. She wasn't waiting for gifts. She was waiting for him. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, sometimes the people you love most are simply hoping for more of your presence, attention, and understanding. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The man slowly walked toward the front door. And the moment he stepped inside, he immediately noticed something unusual. Silence. Not peaceful silence. Emotional silence. The kind that forms after years of people slowly learning not to expect too much attention anymore. The living room lights were dim. A family movie still paused on the television. 2 untouched mugs of tea rested on the coffee table. And suddenly, the reality hit him harder than ever before. His family had been continuing life around the empty spaces his absence created. Not because they stopped loving him. Because they adapted to emotional distance over time. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, people eventually stop asking for attention when disappointment teaches them not to expect it anymore. Pause there. Because somebody listening felt that deeply tonight. The man slowly walked into the kitchen. And there, sitting quietly at the table, was his wife, still awake. The moment she looked up, her expression changed instantly. Not anger, not shock, surprise. Because he almost never came home early enough anymore to sit in silence beside her. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Because sometimes emotional distance becomes so familiar that reconnecting feels strangely unfamiliar at first. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, healing conversations often begin quietly because hearts are afraid to hope too quickly. Think about that carefully. Because somebody listening has relationships waiting for honesty. But fear keeps delaying the conversation. The man finally sat down slowly across from her. And after a long silence, he said something he had not said sincerely in years. I didn't realize how far away I became. The words immediately filled the room with emotion. Because deep inside, both of them already knew it was true. The wife looked down quietly, then finally whispered something that completely shattered him inside. We stopped trying to interrupt your work because it always felt like we were competing against it. Pause. Because somebody listening needed exactly that moment tonight. The man suddenly realized something painful. His family had not been asking for perfection. They were asking to feel emotionally important again. Not secondary. Not postponed. Not squeezed into the remaining exhausted minutes left after work consumed everything else. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, some relationships quietly suffer not from lack of love, but from lack of emotional priority. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The wife continued softly. The hardest part wasn't the long hours. It was feeling like your mind was always somewhere else even when you were physically here. The room fell completely silent. Because suddenly, he understood the true meaning of emotional absence. Not leaving physically. Leaving mentally. Emotionally. Relationally. And over time, families feel that distance deeply. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, attention is one of the purest forms of love people can give one another. The man slowly covered his face with his hands. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to admit something honestly. He was exhausted. Not only from work. From carrying pressure so constantly that he forgot how to simply be emotionally present. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, some people become so focused on surviving responsibility that they slowly forget how to nurture connection. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed that reminder tonight. At that exact moment, soft footsteps appeared in the hallway. His daughter. Still awake. She stopped the moment she saw both of them sitting together quietly. And immediately, something emotional shifted inside the room. Not dramatic. Tender. The daughter looked at him carefully. Almost cautiously. Like someone unsure whether this moment would disappear quickly again. And suddenly, the realization hit him harder than anything else that night. His family had slowly learned not to expect too much emotional availability anymore. That truth hurt deeply. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, repeated disappointment quietly teaches people how much of their heart feels safe to offer. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening has unintentionally created emotional distance without realizing how deeply it affected others. The daughter finally asked softly, "Are you staying home tomorrow?" Such a simple question. Yet it carried years of emotional meaning underneath it. Because she wasn't asking about his schedule. She was asking whether she still mattered enough to receive his full attention. The man immediately felt tears forming again. And for the first time in years, he answered without looking at his phone. Without thinking about work. Without mentally rushing somewhere else. "Yes. I'm staying." The daughter immediately hugged him tightly. And in that moment, something inside the family finally began healing. Not because every problem disappeared, but because awareness changed direction. Awareness creates honesty. Honesty creates understanding. Understanding creates healing. And healing changes everything. Archangel Michael says, "My beloved child, families begin healing the moment emotional presence becomes." Because somebody listening needed exactly that reminder tonight. The man looked around the room quietly. The untouched tea. The paused movie. His wife beside him. His daughter hugging him tightly. And suddenly, he realized something powerful. These were the real assets he almost lost. Not accounts. Not achievements. Not contracts. Moments. Connection. Trust. Presence. Love. The invisible treasures people often notice only after emotional distance becomes painful enough to finally wake them up. You may notice the QR code on the screen or the link in the first comment and description. For some viewers, it becomes a meaningful place to continue reflecting on messages like these, explore prayer resources, connect with encouraging community discussions, or discover additional faith-centered reflections connected with peace, family, emotional healing, and personal growth. Others continue reflecting privately in their own way. Both approaches can be meaningful when chosen sincerely and intentionally. Because reflection creates awareness. Awareness creates wisdom. Wisdom creates clarity. And clarity influences direction. Some viewers also quietly choose to support spaces that continue sharing encouragement, reflection resources, prayer-centered messages, and uplifting community conversations through the support links below. Others simply continue reflecting privately. Both choices are meaningful when approached sincerely and freely. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, wisdom grows stronger whenever people intentionally create space for meaningful connection, gratitude, reflection, and emotional presence. And before this message ends, the man noticed one final thing waiting beside the television. A folded drawing his daughter made years ago as a child. And written across the top in large uneven letters were words that immediately broke his heart completely. My favorite days are when Dad stays home. The moment he read those words, he realized how long his family had quietly been waiting for him to come back emotionally. You may once again notice the QR code or the link below. For some people it provides access to prayer pages, reflection resources, encouraging discussions, and supportive community spaces connected with messages like these. Some viewers quietly choose to sow encouragement and support into communities that continue sharing hope, wisdom, reflection, and spiritual encouragement with others. Others continue their own reflection privately. Both paths can be meaningful when approached freely and sincerely. Because sometimes the greatest wake-up call in life is realizing the people you love were never asking for perfection. They were simply asking for more of you. Backhand index pointing right. Comment this word if this message reached your spirit. Present. Backhand index pointing right, and if you are ready for the conclusion, comment. Final part. Because the final part reveals the decision the man made the next morning, and why it transformed his family forever. Final part, the morning he chose what truly mattered. My beloved child. Stay here for one final moment. Do not rush away yet. Because the man was no longer the same person who sat alone in that office earlier that night. Something inside him had changed. Not because of fear. Not because of pressure. Not because of money. Because awareness finally became stronger than distraction. Pause. Take a slow breath. Allow yourself to become completely still. Because what happened the next morning transformed his family forever. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, many people wait for life to collapse before they finally change their priorities. Wisdom changes direction before the collapse ever arrives. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The house was quiet now. His wife had finally fallen asleep peacefully beside him on the couch. His daughter rested nearby beneath a blanket after falling asleep during the movie they finally finished together. And for the first time in years, the man noticed something extraordinary. Peace. Not dramatic excitement. Not achievement. Not applause. Quiet peace. The kind of peace that cannot be purchased. The kind of peace people often sacrifice accidentally while chasing everything else. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, some of the most valuable moments in life appear ordinary while they are happening. Think about that carefully. Because somebody listening has been overlooking meaningful moments for too long. Simple conversations. Shared laughter. Quiet evenings. Family dinners. Moments of emotional connection. Those things seem small. Yet over time, they become the memories people treasure most deeply. The man looked around the living room slowly. The paused movie credits still glowed softly across the television screen. The old drawing from his daughter still rested beside the couch. The untouched work notifications continued flashing silently on his phone nearby. And suddenly, he realized something powerful. The world would always demand more from him. More time. More energy. More pressure. More attention. But his family simply wanted him. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, some people spend their entire lives building external success while quietly starving emotionally inside their own homes. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly that reminder tonight. The man finally picked up his phone again. And for a moment, old habits returned automatically. Unread emails. Urgent notifications. Missed calls. Meeting reminders. The pressure immediately tried pulling him back into the same cycle again. But this time, something felt different. Because now he clearly saw the cost of constantly living emotionally unavailable. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, not every urgent thing is truly important, and not every important thing appears urgent. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening has allowed urgency to control their life for too long. And slowly, important things became postponed repeatedly. Health postponed. Rest postponed. Peace postponed. Family postponed. Connection postponed. Meanwhile, Life quietly continued moving forward. The man finally opened his calendar. And for the first time in years, he started deleting things instead of adding more. Meetings, extra obligations, non-stop commitments. Not because responsibilities disappeared, because priorities changed. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, wisdom often begins when people finally recognize the difference between what is valuable and what is merely demanding. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The man suddenly remembered another line from the mysterious letter. A powerful lawyer is coming. And finally, he understood the deeper meaning. The lawyer was truth itself. Truth exposing what had quietly been happening inside his heart and home for years. Truth forcing him to confront what constant distraction was slowly costing him emotionally. Truth defending the things that mattered most before they disappeared completely. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, awareness becomes a powerful defender when it finally reveals what truly deserves protection. Think about your own life. What truly deserves more protection right now? Your peace. Your health. Your family. Your emotional presence. Your connection with people you love. Those things matter deeply. Because what receives attention eventually becomes stronger. The man slowly stood up from the couch and walked toward the kitchen window. Morning sunlight had finally begun appearing across the horizon. And suddenly, he realized something he had not felt in years. Hope. Not because every problem disappeared overnight, but because direction finally changed. And direction changes everything. Archangel Michael says, my beloved child, healing often begins the moment people stop living automatically and start living intentionally. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening has been surviving routines instead of intentionally living life. Always rushing. Always reacting. Always exhausted. Yet peace grows differently. Peace grows intentionally. Through presence. Through awareness. Through meaningful connection. Through gratitude. Through attention to what truly matters. The man looked back toward his sleeping family quietly. And suddenly, another painful realization surfaced. For years, they had been trying to reconnect gently in small ways. Invitations to dinner. Simple conversations. Movie nights. Small moments asking for his attention. But pressure constantly distracted him from noticing how deeply they missed him emotionally. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, many relationships slowly fade not because love disappears, but because attention disappears first. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed exactly that reminder tonight. The man finally sat back down beside his daughter carefully. And resting beside her was the old drawing from years ago. My favorite days are when Dad stays home. This time, he looked at the drawing differently. Not as guilt. As clarity. Because suddenly, he understood what success truly meant. Not endless achievement. Balanced living. Meaningful relationships. Peace inside the home. Emotional presence. A family that feels loved instead of emotionally postponed. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, some of the greatest victories in life happen quietly inside homes where people finally choose presence over pressure. Feel that deeply. Because somebody listening needed exactly those words tonight. The man finally made one last decision before sunrise fully arrived. Every Friday evening from that moment forward would belong completely to family. No work. No interruptions. No emotional absence. Just presence. Simple. Ordinary. Meaningful presence. And over time, those evenings slowly transformed the atmosphere inside the family. Not perfectly. Not instantly. Gradually. Laughter returned more often. Conversations became deeper. Warmth returned to the home. His daughter started sharing more again. His wife smiled differently again. And the man finally understood something powerful. The greatest assets in life are rarely stored inside accounts. They live inside relationships. Inside peace. Inside trust. Inside meaningful connection. Those invisible treasures shape the quality of life far more deeply than people realize. Jesus speaks softly. My beloved child, a peaceful heart and connected family are among the greatest blessings people can protect in this life. Pause there. Because somebody listening needed that reminder tonight. Now listen carefully. Because this is the final truth. Sometimes life sends warnings before emotional distance becomes permanent. Not to create fear. To awaken awareness. Awareness that reminds people what truly matters before too much time quietly passes. And if this message reached your heart tonight, perhaps awareness is already beginning inside you too. You may notice the QR code on the screen or the link in the first comment and description. For some viewers, it becomes a meaningful place to continue reflecting on messages like these, explore prayer resources, connect with encouraging community discussions, or discover additional faith-centered reflections connected with peace, family, emotional healing, and personal growth. Others continue reflecting privately in their own way. Both approaches can be meaningful when chosen sincerely and intentionally. Because reflection creates awareness. Awareness creates wisdom. Wisdom creates clarity. And clarity influences direction. Some viewers also quietly choose to support spaces that continue sharing encouragement, reflection resources, prayer-centered messages, and uplifting community conversations through the support links below. Others simply continue reflecting privately. Both choices are meaningful when approached sincerely and freely. Archangel Michael speaks. My beloved child, wisdom grows stronger whenever people intentionally create space for meaningful connection, gratitude, reflection, peace, and emotional presence. And before this message ends, remember this one final thing. The people who love you most are not waiting for a perfect version of you. They are waiting for a present version of you. A version willing to listen. To pause. To connect. To protect peace before pressure steals it completely. Because one day, people rarely regret not working more. But many regret the moments of connection they unintentionally allowed to disappear while they were too distracted to notice. Backhand index pointing right. Comment this word if this message reached your heart. Priorities. Backhand index pointing right, and if this message encouraged you, share it with someone who may need the reminder that presence, peace, and family are among life's greatest treasures.